Good morning. Good morning. We're all set up and ready to roll. Flip our page. We got a bunch of stuff on that one I think to work with. Let's see, this way. Make sure I don't skip a page. Everyone ever noticed a skipped page in a sketchbook before? It's always a little bit weird. You're like, oh, where did that page go? How did I miss it? Let's get this roughed in. Good morning, everybody. Anybody else working on any morning studies? Daily warm-ups? Good morning. Good morning, everybody popping in. leave enough room for the tail. That's alright. Already drawn it a few times anyway. And then she has a whole bunch of like little ones posed around it. So I should probably get these little things marked off here, first. Anybody else got a morning study project they're working on? Let's put these little guys in here. It's roughed in. Interesting how often she's got this seahorse up on two legs. At least to me, it's interesting. So. some reason there's an upside down one over here. Labus, Cape Sakasi, Tuve vel su grigio i mano live streams. All of them. Now, vi säger näblogge, näturum pamoku shasavaita del kipsaki dekingumo dienos ketvirtadienį mes turim neturim pamokų šitą savaitę. Bet tik turim dar vieną pamokų savaitę po to prieš semestro pabaigą. That would need to be cleaned up. Aš nesuprantu šitą parašą, kaip sudarome čia mano universitete, bet there you go. Aš kaip kapiruoju šitą dailininką Terryl Whitlatch. Ji dirba daug su kinu ir kompiuterinių žaidimų žaidimų, taip galbūt projektais ir nutarau, kad būtų gerai studijuoti, kaip ji piešia kaip sakyti, gyvūnus. Ir aš panašiai studijavau daug dailininkų šiais metais. Iš tikrųjų pradėjau kaip panašius projektus gal 3 metus atgal. Bet jos knyga dabar mano dabartinis projektus praktikuoti. Aš noriu žinoti, gal yra pratimai, su kuo aš nepažįstu, kurie gali būti kaip sakyti, naudoti mano pamokose su studentais universitete. Herba viti. Herbekas šitas žodis. This up and I can show you the book. Good morning. Good morning. people popping in. Keep forgetting it's the same drawing on the page, and I just look down. It gets rid of the glare. And I'm sort of fighting here. Good morning, people popping in. It's out the window, Bosch. Good morning. Hey, Bosch, you want to come lay down? What book is that? This is The Science of Creature Design by Terryl Whitlatch. She's a really great creature designer. And this book kind of, mostly it's like she's been designing chimeras, but she's, shows off like real animal anatomy, and then has like a little application page, like this right here, where she's designed a kind of a seahorse horse. And it's interesting. I'm listening to, I won't tell you which one, but I'm listening to this schoolism tutorial. It's kind of off to the side, and the artist is explaining, like, she's kind of making excuses for being unproductive, which I think is really weird. When you're working for a client, like, you have to find ways to be creative even if you don't feel like it. she's like talking about off days and not feeling great about whatever, and I'm just like, this is really bad advice for people. So that, because there's all kinds of professional things you can do to move forward on a project, even if you're not feeling it. You need to find ways of finding the meaningfulness of a project, even if you're not excited about it, or you're feeling slow or whatever that day. You have to be able to move forward. It's just such a weird way of making excuses for not being productive. I do highly recommend the Schoolism subscription. Like, it's a really great deal. It's like a bunch of really great master classes from people who work professionally. Some are better than others. Like this one, I wouldn't necessarily put this artist at the highest tier of people that I'm interested in. But I want to hear what she had to say about what her process was. So I thought it would be helpful for him. It was okay. It wasn't that groundbreaking, but my major complaint here is her little final discussion here, talking about how you don't always feel inspired, and you have to. She just talks about like she just like sits still and does nothing, and that sounds like an issue with depression to me, not necessarily an inspiration issue. But it's just such a weird way of kind of making excuses for a lack of professionalism. Yeah, it's true. You don't always feel like you got things you can do, but that's where the professional attitude kicks in. You find what you need to make the project happen. And just because you don't feel like you're being creative or productive doesn't necessarily mean you are not. Like, how you feel about your work is very different from your actual work. Can I do freehand inking? Well, I mean, I'm kind of loose sketching these characters. I didn't necessarily have to like do that with these smaller sketches, like these little ones right here. But it does help with the larger ones, just so I make sure I'm hitting certain targets. I can certainly, just go out with a pen and pencil, or a pen, go out and do some sketching or whatever. But it does help actually speed up a little bit by having a little bit of an underdrawing for myself in here. I used to do all these drawings with like red ballpoint pens. I was doing earlier studies from a different book. Let's see, scoot over to get this longer line in. She calls it a esquilina. That's what it says on the page at the top on the left. Esquilina. That's her book, Science of Creature Design. And so it's a really good one. She's got 3 books on creature design. Apparently she's working on a 4th one. I met her and an author that she was working with at Lightbox. And So I think it's supposed to come out maybe later this year. I need to get the third creature book that I don't have. I need to figure out which, because I've got two of them. I just don't remember what they're all like. I know this one now because I've been using it for the last few months. Started sketching from this book back in September. And yeah, I really enjoyed the process. I was hurrying a lot faster through books, and then I was like, I don't need to hurry so much anymore, because I'd gone through a whole bunch of books relatively quickly for over the last year for study purposes. Yeah, so she does in the book is she basically does the anatomy of a real animal, like a horse, right? And then she kind of mixes it with something else. So she kind of makes these chimeras. Nothing wrong with that. I teach like a creature design as part of my concept art course at my university. And I tell them not to do chimeras, so it has to be like an original animal. But I think she may have mentioned stonefish. I don't remember though. No, let's see. This is a type of sea unicorn, hippocampus, that can roam the sands and hide in the reefs. So it's kind of a dual life creature. But yeah, if you're not familiar with Terryl Whitlatch, she's probably her most famous design, or infamous design, is Jar Jar Binks. So she's been around a long time working with film, designing creatures. She works on like the Avatar type movies and any movies that involve like serious creature design. She's a big part of that, and so she you'll see her work in lots and lots of movies, and she kind of strikes me as like a nuts and bolts type of designer. So like I don't know, meat and potatoes, where she's really trying to get into that practical, how does it work, because she has a background in zoology, and so she's really interested in making the creatures very believable, in the sense of it's usually based off of some kind of earth anatomy, and then tweaked to be based off whatever the movie requires. And yeah, I think well, the thing is, it's hard to kind of imagine things that we're not going to be familiar with, and so like we do like creature studies of earth animals, and I try to point out certain things, like predators, their eyes are kind of looking forward, while prey animals, their eyes look to the side. Or we look at animal structure. We don't spend a huge amount of time on the creature design part, but we go over, because it's kind of an introductory course, to page 103, and so I'm working on some creature designs for myself, and I want them to definitely not feel like anything on Earth, but at the same time to be understandable, and there is a certain level of challenge for that. There we go. Alright, let's move on to the second phase. I've been working on my inking technique. Obviously doing it here, but also kind of just on my own after doing these studies. Let's see, today's the 25th. Here's the book. But you see kind of the detail she goes into the design. And these are doing some inking practice, so I have some drawings that I've done, and so I've got some blue lines of my sketches printed out. Kind of wish I'd done them a little bit darker, but alright, zoom in up here. I'll work on these over here, this area. And my goal here is just to kind of experiment and see if what I can glean from standard inking processes. Some of the projects I'm working on. Yeah, so this is part of a personal project. Been developing a kind of a world building project, and as part of that, developing environments and creatures and characters and a whole bunch of things. You can kind of see a lot of that development stuff on my website, Rainland Studios. And I've got sketchbook pages, digital stuff I've been, oops, it's a little too much of a blob of ink right there. Let's see if I can extract that off with some osmosis so it doesn't drip away from there. And so I've been working on a larger project, and then so in my sketchbook and digital, I've thought about doing an art book based off of it, but as I've been working on the project, I've been thinking about it in terms of a story and characters, and thinking about maybe doing a comic book, some kind of graphic novel with a simple story. And I've got the premise of it, so basically pause this real quick on. So the premise of the story is basically the humans have colonized this distant planet, after traveling however long in space, and this is them after they've been living there for a long time, a couple hundred years, several generations, etc. And they've got a big city and they're settled in, and on this planet that they've settled on, from outer space or even on the planet, it kind of looks like a giant tangle of branches, like a big tangled bush, basically. And I've got a design for it on the site, but I've got improvements that I've already want to make to that, because that was just an initial sketch I spent some time on a year and a half ago. But again, they've settled on this planet. It looks like it's like made of this giant plant, and there's its own ecosystem. It's got life on the planet. But no intelligent life. But there is evidence of a prior civilization that appears to be long gone. Like they haven't been there for hundreds of thousands or millions of years. But there are kind of these artifacts of their civilization that remain. I'm calling totems or vaults, depending on the context, and they're kind of scattered around the planet. There's different ones in different levels of condition, and they look different from each other, but they kind of share certain attributes. I actually made a 3D model, kind of concept model of one that's on my website. I haven't posted it here yet. I need to start posting on here. I've been actively applying nightshade to all of my stuff to attack the AI overlords that all these companies seem to be fixated on for the moment for some reason. Anyway, the kind of the premise of the story, I want to keep it simple because I've not really done comics before. So if you've been paying attention to the other live streams I've been doing, it's really my first one. I decided I didn't like the paper. I like this paper a lot better. But the premise of the story is basically there's this father and daughter, and they've hired this guy to take them out into some of these illegal to access reserves to look at some of these totems that they're not allowed to really go visit. And so they have like these wildlife reserves that people aren't allowed into, and there's special kind of totems out there. And so it's about them going out there and checking those things out when, of course, things start to go terribly wrong. And we discover, some of the secrets of the totems, but also what's going on with these different characters. What are they really there for? Because their motivations aren't entirely straightforward. And so that's kind of the premise. Oh yeah, where'd you do your bachelor's of illustration? That's kind of what I'm teaching. So it was a father and daughter that are in there. Like I said, not everything is as it exactly appears in the show. Or in the beginning of the comic. Part of it is like I've kind of developed this idea called plant punk, and basically a lot of there's something weird about the plant life on the planet, that some of it appears to kind of transfer electricity or energy, and humans have kind of adapted that to their technology as a power source, among other things that they're doing. But I've thought of some other things that might be interesting in it, so that they're, maybe humans are somehow stranded on the planet, so they can't leave. you know, there's something that prevented them from going back into space, or something happened. Oh yeah? Yeah, it's interesting. Everywhere I have taught at universities, illustration is by far, usually almost by far, the most popular program, or one of the most popular programs. Because I think students really want to learn art skills so they can, you know, tell their own stories. And it's interesting to see how many universities are really resistant to developing that as a program. And but everywhere I've been, it's, you know, it's by far, like, it's very, very popular. Students want it. Racing in dystopian worlds, huh? There's a book, I think I might have it, that kind of goes into that a little bit. Let me see if it's behind me. I have a whole bunch of books behind me. Hello, Bosch. What's up? I'm always nervous. The dog likes to, you know, well, it's probably true of all dogs, but mine, you know, he likes to stand behind me sometimes. And that can be a problem. It might be this one. It might be the book I just don't have, but have looked at before. Thanks, Bosch. I know you're right there in front of me. I appreciate the effort. Maybe that's what I'm thinking about, is this book. It could depend on the quality of your program. You know, it depends on what the focus is. But let's set that to the side. So I've got these two art books right here. So they might be of interest. This one's X Odyssey, and I think this one, it's a bunch of different artists in here. Let me pull back a little bit. And pull back up here. But so it's kind of a space exploration book, but it's got a lot of cool vehicles, and I think you can still get it on Amazon. But again, it's a bunch of different artists, so it's not just one person, which I kind of like. You know, you have a variety of approaches. This is kind of like a space exploration and settlement concept art book. A lot of people are still around, like Baron Terry, still doing great stuff. Kyle, I'm not sure, I don't know who that one is exactly, but a lot of cool like vehicles and locations going on in it. And I bought this a while ago, but then I think maybe more relevant to your kind of racing thing, so I think this one, Traverse. It's vehicles from the outer rim of imagination, and there's like a combination of like 3D stuff in here. Let's see, there we go. Get that up where it's losing some of the glare. So like, you know, 3D paint overs like that one, or, you know, more extensive paint overs, you know, vehicle sketches and concepts. Etc. in here. So there's a lot of really great stuff in here. But there is one that's about racing. I'd have to go look it up and see. I think it's probably in my wish list somewhere. But it's specifically about racing. But these are a couple of really great books. One kind of publisher to really pay attention to is this one, Design Studio Press, and they publish a lot of books about concept art. And there's a couple books, actually. I have their first couple of books. One's called Concept Design. It's by Scott Robertson. You might have heard of him. And then the second book they did was The Skillful Huntsman, which is a really great book. It's a senior student project he did with some students at Art Center, which is, you know, a big art school in Los Angeles area. And But I love it for showing my students because it's all student work, and therefore, it's kind of me letting them know what's possible for them. Obviously, they're very high level students, but it's still kind of reflective of what they can do to a certain degree. But again, they're all really. There's a bunch of really great books that they've done out of there. Part of it. So I'm kind of taking a lot of lessons I've been looking at online for professional inkers like Richard Friend, or a couple of other ones like what's his name? I can't remember. But I've been looking at kind of these traditional American comic book inkers a lot, and kind of looking at their techniques for inking. And so I studied some of drawovers of actual comic pages that I found and printed out, and then would draw on top of. And this is kind of me drawing over my own drawings now, kind of trying to use some of those techniques combined with whatever my natural aesthetic is, because there's things we kind of do by default, which is where it comes in handy to study techniques so that you can expand on that. But and some of these areas work out better than others, but overall it's a handy way of studying. I think, anyway. So so that's kind of what I'm working on. Kind of one of my goals with the alien life on this planet is I do want to make sure it feels very distinct from the human experience. So while things should be identified as like predator prey and things like that, it should definitely feel like they're in a foreign environment. That there's definitely a disconnect between them and the creatures that they are surrounded by and the environment they're surrounded by. They're they can relate it a little bit, but it's definitely not us. I always kind of have this pet peeve with a lot of media. Probably showed up in that Creator movie. I haven't seen it. I heard it was kind of mixed in terms of its storytelling quality. Like, it looked really great. Cars from the 2000s. Maybe they'll have my car, the Xterra. But zoom in up top, huh? That sounds like a cool car world thing. I was thinking, was it like a, it's like Rampage or something? An initial script written for my story. Um, Kind of using spreadsheets and Google Slides to write it. So kind of each slide is, well, not each slide is like a page, and then I've got it, or actually it's a double page, so it's the facing pages that would be in the book, and then each of the cells in the slide in the spreadsheets are individual panels. Well, that's. I don't know if I want to explain what this thing is just yet. Um, but yeah, it's related to what's going on here. Um, but I imagine these things, there's different sized ones. So some could be like, I don't know, 12. I don't know how many centimeters is that. So, but it could be about the size of your hand, or two of them. But I'm trying to remember the name. There was like a. Yeah, it could be something like that. Again, I don't want to say too much about what this is because it's really important to the story, or this type of thing anyway. Um, Yeah, in the story, like the father and daughter and the guide, they're touring the different sites, and the daughter decides that she wants to take off and explore on her own, and that's kind of when they start running into problems because they have to figure out where she went. I could see that, right? You know, this is attaches to something specific. There was a cartoon show when I was a kid. I'm trying to remember. They had like some plant-based vehicles, if I recall. I should just sit down and Google it. It probably wouldn't take more than a few minutes to figure it out. It was like a 1980s cartoon show. I think around the same time that was like the Dinotopia, not Dinotopia, Dino Riders was around. Yeah, it has like a, you know, it has an Earth atmosphere, so people can walk freely on it. I kind of have this idea that, like, in the history of the people that colonized it, of the colonialists, is some kind of civil war on the ship as they were arriving in the solar system for this planet, and so as a result, they had to evacuate their colony ship, and that's part of the reason why they're stuck on the planet. And there's different factions that were part of that civil war, and kind of led to the factions that exist on the planet. You know, the different groups that do different things, or the live in different regions, serve different purposes. But I didn't want to overcomplicate the story that I wanted to tell first, because again, I haven't really done a graphic novel before, so I thought it'd be easier to kind of start off with this, where you've got this guide who's out here doing these illegal tours, and then you've got this father and daughter who are kind of more from maybe like a government or bureaucrat type class of people on the planet, and yeah, they have a lot of entitlement because of their position. And so kind of start off with, you know, just these three characters in this one place to kind of start off that story. Smudged. So that's what my brain is kind of thinking. Oh yeah, they have yeah, the mangrove trees are really interesting. I had a student, an online student that I worked with a long time ago, who He's from the Philippines, and he did a whole kind of world building project for that's kind of more Philippines based, using mangroves as a kind of a structure for the culture that he was developing. And so that was kind of interesting to watch him work on that. And then kind of the major kind of structure of the story is supposed to be kind of sci-fi action adventure horror story. So that's kind of the intent for mine. It's not really like a post-apocalyptic thing to say like you're doing, but hello, Bosch. What's out the window? Get that out of your way. There you go. Hello, Dr. Thornock. So, but yeah, that's kind of the big thought. So I've been, doing this portfolio update and then working on it from there. Huh. Well, that kind of makes sense, right? There's certain trees, like in the United States, there's certain kinds of pine trees that have big pine cones on them, and the pine cones only open if there's fire. Or there's the aspen trees, and they don't really drop seeds at all. They grow by sending out roots, and then a new tree pops up. And so a whole grove of trees is actually a single plant. It's like one of the oldest living plants and largest ones is a grove of aspens in Utah. Something they think it's about 80,000 years old. Well, it gets hot, right? So the heat opens the pine cone. So it's not that there's just a fire nearby, but there's a temperature that causes it to open. Yeah. So it's like a reflex, yeah, because whatever chemical in there that decides, that gets to a certain temperature, is what releases the pine cones. Yeah, but it needs a forest fire for it to reproduce, which is really interesting, right? And so if you prevent all forest fires, you won't get any new trees. Yeah, and then so in addition to this project, I'm back working on my teaching website, which is myartprofessor.com. I've been distracted. Actually, you might like this as a vehicle project, and it's a 2000s car. So I have a Nissan Xterra from 2006, and the Xterra is an SUV, sport utility vehicle for off-roading. And they made them from 2000. This edition they made from 2005 to 2015. So, mine's a 2006, but I've been converting it into a mini camper, and it's nicer than a post-apocalyptic vehicle. It's designed to be comfortable, but has like a cot-sized bed inside, a full kitchen with a fridge, freezer, solar power, of course. It also charges off of the alternator in the engine, which is the fastest way of charging it. But the solar usually just kind of keeps it topped up if I'm camped on location and there's some sunlight, especially for the fridge. Just kind of slows down the decrease of power. And then, yeah, but I've got, separate power system, diesel heater, the whole works inside of there. And that's been actually a project that's distracted me from my teaching website for the last basically 3 years. So I started actively building it in 2021. So kind of as the pandemic restrictions were about to end is when I started building it. I wasn't sure how much longer they were going to last, so I just decided to take that summer and really push on building it. And I did an initial build in 2021, and then last year summer, so 2023, I took over the wood shop at the university I was at in the summer and did some really nice finished woodworking on the inside. So here's the account. But anyway, this project was so, because I did all of the work for it. So the plumbing, the electrical, the sewing, the woodworking, of course, everything was done by me. And I did get help for advice on the electrical system, just because I don't have any experience with doing that. It's a little harder for me to figure out, but that was a very intense project. It took all of my creative energy, and really enjoyed it. But again, I didn't really produce very much art, and I kind of stopped working on my teaching site. And but it's essentially been done for a little bit now. I've got a few things that are broken that I need to fix, but like the diesel heater stopped working. I don't know why. It was working earlier this year. I'm hoping it's just like a loose plug or wire somewhere. I just need to figure out which one. But so I'm kind of back working on that now, actively every day. I'll do this one other one next to it. So I've been doing a site review to see if anything's broken on there as a result of any kind of the software updates. It's a WordPress site that uses like a learning management system plugin, and then some other stuff to make it graphically appealing. So so when I graduated, I was offered teaching, actually, when I first graduated, and hit pause on this. So yeah, when I graduated, I kind of actually before I graduated was when I started teaching. So they offered me some adjunct teaching for figure drawing. It was actually a case of mistaken identity, but they thought work they'd seen on some of the whiteboards was mine when it was someone else's. I didn't know that at the time when I got hired, but they just offered me teaching. I was like, okay, I'll do that. Hadn't thought about it, but why not? And that kind of let me work with some local artists. I was kind of really interested in fine art painting at the time. I still am. I just been into this project lately, but I was working with local artists, so it kind of gave me the space to work on that skill development. And then a little bit later on, a year or so later, I got hired on as a contractor at a creative studio. It doesn't exist anymore, but called 8fish, to do mostly I was hired to work on among other things, this giant mural project for a regional gas station called Maverick. And back then, that was 2006-ish when I started working on that, I think. And just when I picked up my car, so I was doing pretty well, relatively speaking. Probably bought more car than I needed, but my first Xterra is when I bought that then. Well, there's a difference between luck and odds, right? So, but yeah, so what got me hired on there, though, was a friend of mine. So I did some freelance for that company, and it was someone I'd worked with on campus. Was working there as an illustrator animator, and he was the one that recommended me for the opportunities I got there. So I did some backgrounds for some corporate animation stuff that they were doing, and then got hired on there more regular. So I was in the office most of the time as a contractor. But so that's kind of how I got started. I was it was actually at the time when I got hired by them, it was kind of back and forth between them and a game studio that wanted me on full time. And actually, in retrospect, I probably could have done both jobs because the game studio would have been regular employment, and then the 8fish one, the illustration art studio one, would have been, because it really ended up being only about 35 hours a week, and when you're young you can work all kinds of crazy hours. But so that's kind of how I got started, was doing things that way. So like your network of friends is often really, really important that you build, and it's easier to do that now than ever, right, because of online. And that existed when I was coming out of school too, so there were still like the big forums. Facebook was new when I was coming out of school, but there was like conceptart.org and CG Talk and eat poo and all these different forums, and that was a good way of networking with people. But in terms of luck, it's more about increasing your odds or your probability, right? So so it's less about luck and probability. So if your work is really good, you have a higher probability of being hired than if your work is mediocre, right? It's not a guarantee you'll get hired, but it is an increase in probabilities. And then if you position yourself so that your work gets seen, that also increases the probability. Like even if your work is mediocre, you're more likely to get hired if people can see your work, if it gets put in front of them somehow. And if it's really good and it gets put in front of them, that's another increase in your probabilities. And then how you present yourself is the other kind of area of probability. So it's the quality of your work, the visibility of your work, and the quality of that visibility. So communicating that for example, I like to recommend students is that you're trying to communicate to a client how your work improves their situation, not how they can improve your situation. And that's a basic marketing thing, right? So if you're looking for clients or customers, customer doesn't care about how Amazon feels about themselves, right? All they care is that Amazon provides them with a service or a good that improves their circumstances. And so if you present yourself in a way that says, I am here to solve your problems rather than be a problem, then that also can help you out too. You don't have to be the best artist. If you're a really great artist and all you do is cause a company headaches, because of attitude or entitlement or whatever, you have to be so good that everything you do is absolutely perfect and wonderful and usable and applicable to their work, or they'd rather deal with someone who's not as good that gets the job done the way they want it. And so I think you kind of blend those things together, and you increase your chances a lot. So like if you're not, like one of the things that I've done in the past, depending on how where my projects are in January, hopefully be done essentially with these concept projects that I've been doing for my portfolio. But what I've done in the past is when I basically would email tons of people every single day. So when I was looking for freelance, especially back in, I think it was 2019, I was teaching as a temporary full-timer in 2018, and then when that came to the end, I didn't really have anything in front of me, so I needed to make some money so I could eat food and pay rent and feed my dog. And he doesn't care about my work, but that's him. And so I sat down and I took the advice that I'd given students dozens and dozens of times, which was, you go to these sites that list all the companies that are working in the area that you're interested in. That could be, like a professional association. Like if you're interested in doing advertising work, like storyboarding or something like that, there's advertising associations that list all these different companies. And I put together an email, or I was more interested in concept art, so I went to the gamedevmap.com site, and it's kind of a website that shows all the game studios in a given city in the world. And I went to their site, and I started locally, of course, which is usually a good idea. And I started emailing something like 30 to 40 companies a day. And it took me about 3 weeks, and then I started getting clients. And I was really busy freelancing that whole summer before I started teaching at a university again. So I do have online courses at that myartprofessor.com site. It's mostly focused on perspectives. So I've got 2 intensive courses on 1 and 2 point perspective that basically cover in detail, like all of the perspective stuff. For technical perspective, so it's not just vanishing points. It's really how perspective works, and then it has it has follow along projects with it. And then there's also the other courses that are on there. They're based off of a university course I did for freshmen on perspective drawing, and it's kind of perspective drawing, but how to use it to solve design problems. So the first course is just like basic perspectives. How do you line things up with vanishing points, turn things into boxes, and turn those boxes into things? Probably. And then the second course, the second project is a 1-point perspective project where they have students build a Mobius Minecraft garden. So you've probably heard of Mobius, right? The comic artist. So we kind of do inking style with his approach. And then, but we design a garden using simple 3D objects. So like, cubes and cylinders and cones and spheres to make a walled garden. A paradise, if you will. A walled garden, right? And so they do that, and then they ink it. They do some texture studies. You map those textures onto those surfaces, and then you build out that that garden. That's one of the things I'm going to do today is organize, because I have all those demo projects sitting around here. I just need to organize them so when people have questions about the site, I can show them what I've done. And then that's the second project for that series. And then the third one is you measure your bedroom or any room in your house. And the project, I measure my kitchen. Students, I typically have them measure their bedroom, but they recreate their room in perspective, like precisely and proportionally. So it's, I cover things like how do you draw a perfect square in perspective, not just a rectangle but a square. And then they build that, and then they have to render it using some kind of concept, so they mix it with an idea. So like students have done things where like it's in a ramen bowl, or it's in a jewelry box, or surrounded by waves because I feel overwhelmed in my classes and all that sort of stuff. And then they have to render it only using black and white shapes, no outlines. But if you shoot me a note with your website, or you just send me a note to look at your stuff, I can check it out here online if there's particular things you want me to look at. And the third project is an isometric project where I have them build like a street corner with 3 buildings using letter forms and architectural styles. And and then they render that out, but it's kind of a preparatory project for the final one, where I've got most of everything I need for that one. I just need to finish off the last few projects, but I could probably just put up what I have. Basically, you draw the that isometric street scene from different points of view from within the composition. And so it kind of forces you to use your imagination to perceive the space, and kind of using different perspective types in a loose way. You could do it precisely, but you could use it in a loose way to render the scene. And gotten some really great student results out of those courses. And we also look at lenses as part of that. So what impact do different kinds of lenses have on the scene? So it's really great for like storyboarding or concept art, or if you're interested in any kind of cinematic approach to art making. It's kind of a really relevant project. So I need to get that one up. And I've kind of done a new version of that for the concept classes I teach at the university I'm at now, where they're designing a vehicle. I had them designing a base before, but now they're designing a vehicle, and then they have to draw that vehicle from the inside and outside from different points of view for their project. So I've thought about, because I've created a lot of video content for that course, and I was thinking about doing some more finished stuff, and then I could also use it for my teaching site. Because we go through the whole design process for inventing plants and animals. It's kind of an overview of concept art practices, and I've got some unique things that I do. Not everything is, there's a lot of common practices that are worth mastering, but I do a few unique kind of approaches to some of those things to add my own little flair. And the other one I could add on too is a figure drawing class. I've got that all structured. I've thought about just going through and reworking the demos, because I was in a hurry to make them for my students back during the COVID times. But yeah, shoot me a DM with your stuff, and be careful if the chat bot appears. I've made a chat bot. I need to improve it. It's kind of overreactive to certain words. It's basically there to kind of get people on the email list or get them to check out my teaching site, or for that comic book, there's an email list I set up for that. There's just a few people on there though, because I haven't been promoting it, but which I should do. But yeah, just trying to get back to regular art practice after finishing my little camper project. The camper project's really for art projects too. It's I called it Plain Air Mobile. So it's I designed it so I could go on location and camp and paint for an extended period of time without having to leave. So I can stay for a week, maybe a little bit longer, depending on my water reserves and food supply. But took it out a bunch this October. In fact, I wasn't home for a single weekend from the first weekend of October through the first weekend of November. I was not home. Not all of them were camping. 3 of them were camping. One of them was Lightbox, which was a really great experience. And then the other was babysitting my sister's pets while she was gone with her family. And then the site itself that I've been making, it's $15 a month to subscribe, or $150 for the year. Again, I'm kind of getting back into the swing of developing content, so as there gets to be more courses on that site, the prices will go up, but not for the subscribers. Keep their current rates. So, but that's kind of what I got going on, and I think that's going to be good for today's in terms of morning studies. And probably be back tomorrow. We don't have school this week, so I've got a little bit more time to do stuff. So appreciate everybody that came in, and we'll talk to you next time.